You are standing in a room full of people. There is noise everywhere, laughter, conversations overlapping. Someone hands you a drink. Someone else smiles at you from across the room. By every external measure, you are surrounded. You are not alone. And yet there it is, that quiet, hollow feeling pressing against the inside of your chest, like an empty room inside a crowded building. You smile back. And the feeling gets worse. This is not shyness. It is not introversion. It is not a personal failing. What you are experiencing has a name, a biological mechanism, and an origin story that stretches back hundreds of thousands of years before the invention of the party, the city, or even the spoken word. And once you understand what is actually happening inside your body in that moment, you will never look at a crowded room the same way again. Start here. Your brain does not measure loneliness the way you think it does. It does not count the number of people around you. It does not care whether you are technically in the presence of other humans. What it measures, constantly, without your permission, is something far more specific. The quality of your social bond. Whether the people around you would come if you called. Whether you are truly known by someone. Whether you belong, not just in the room, but in the group. John Cacioppo spent over 2 decades at the University of Chicago studying loneliness, and what he found changed the way researchers think about human social behavior entirely. Loneliness, Cacioppo argued, is not an emotion. It is a biological signal. The same way physical pain tells your body that something is damaging your tissue, loneliness tells your nervous system that something is damaging your social bonds. It is an alarm. And like all alarms, it is not designed to be comfortable. It is designed to be impossible to ignore. For most of human history, that alarm worked exactly as intended. Go back roughly 200,000 years. Your ancestors did not live in cities. They did not live in towns. They lived in bands of 50 to 150 people, small, tight, interdependent groups where every face was a known face. Every person in the group had a role. Every relationship had history. If you were separated from the group, you did not feel mildly uncomfortable. You were in danger. Real, immediate, mortal danger. Predators moved at the edges of the group. Starvation moved faster when you were alone. A single human being, separated from the band, had a survival rate that dropped towards 0 faster than almost any other variable you could measure. So your brain built a solution. It learned to treat social disconnection like physical pain. It learned to flood your system with a low-grade anxiety when your bonds felt weak, pushing you back toward the group. It learned to make isolation feel so bad that you would do almost anything to repair the connection. Robin Dunbar, the evolutionary anthropologist at Oxford University, has spent years mapping the relationship between brain size and social group size across primate species. His conclusion was startling in its precision. The neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex social reasoning, scales almost perfectly with the average social group size of each species. Bigger social groups require more cognitive computing power to manage. And in humans, Dunbar calculated, the cognitive upper limit of genuinely meaningful social relationships sits at roughly 150 people. After that, the quality of the bond drops off sharply. You can recognize more faces, but you cannot truly know more people. This is the first part of your answer. Your brain was built for a social world of 150 people, where every face was a known face, and where being known was the same thing as being safe. Now, stand back in that crowded room. How many of those people truly know you? Not your name, not what you do for work, not the version of yourself you present at a party. How many of them know what you are afraid of at 3 a.m? How many of them have seen you fail and stayed anyway? How many of them would pick up the phone on the second ring? Your brain knows the answer before you finish asking the question, and it sends the signal. But here is where it gets more complicated. Here is the part that Cacioppo's research uncovered that most people never hear. Loneliness does not just make you feel bad, it changes the way you think. When your social alarm fires, your nervous system does not just produce sadness or yearning. It shifts your entire cognitive orientation toward threat detection. Cacioppo and his colleagues found that lonely people show measurably higher levels of cortisol, the primary stress hormone, even when their external circumstances are identical to those of non-lonely people. They show heightened activity in the amygdala, the brain's threat processing center, in response to social stimuli. They are, in a measurable neurological sense, more alert to danger, more watchful, more guarded. And here is the cruel twist. Because when you walk into a crowded room already feeling disconnected, your brain is not in connection-seeking mode. It is in threat detection mode. You scan faces not for warmth, but for rejection. You interpret ambiguous social cues, a glance that lingers a half-second too long, a conversation that pauses when you approach, as confirmation that you do not belong. You pull back slightly. You protect yourself. And in protecting yourself, you make genuine connection less likely. The alarm creates the very conditions that keep it ringing. Cacioppo called this the loneliness loop, and it is one of the most elegant and devastating mechanisms in all of human psychology. Now add one more layer. In 2000, the sociologist Robert Putnam published a book called Bowling Alone, in which he documented one of the most significant social shifts in modern American history. Over the previous 4 decades, participation in civic groups, religious institutions, neighborhood associations, sports leagues, and informal social gatherings had collapsed across nearly every demographic. Americans were spending more time physically near other people, in offices, in malls, at events, and less time in the kinds of embedded, reciprocal, long-term social structures that create genuine belonging. In other words, the crowd got bigger. The bonds got thinner. Your ancestors were surrounded by 150 people who knew their entire lives. You are surrounded by thousands of people who know your username. The signal-to-noise ratio of human connection has never been lower, and your nervous system, which has not meaningfully updated in 200,000 years, is doing exactly what it was designed to do, sounding the alarm. Here is something almost no one talks about. The experience of loneliness in a crowd is not a symptom of something being wrong with you. It is a symptom of something being wrong with the environment. It is your 200,000-year-old nervous system correctly identifying that the social world around you is not providing what it was built to require. It is an accurate reading of a real mismatch. The alarm is not broken, the building is. This is why telling lonely people to go out more, to socialize more, to be in more rooms with more people, often makes things worse instead of better. Presence without depth does not satisfy the signal. It can intensify it. Because now your brain has more evidence, more faces that do not know you, more confirmation of the gap between where you are and where your nervous system needs you to be. What actually moves the needle, as Cacioppo's later research consistently showed, is not quantity of contact, but quality of reciprocity. The sense that someone is tracking you across time, that your history with them is accumulating into something, that they would notice if you disappeared. Even one relationship with that quality shifts the entire threat detection orientation of the nervous system. One person who truly knows you can quiet the alarm that 100 acquaintances cannot. Your ancestors understood this without knowing they understood it. They built their entire lives inside the 150. Every ceremony, every ritual, every shared meal around a fire was a mechanism for deepening the bonds that kept the alarm quiet. They were not being sentimental. They were being precise. They were engineering the exact social conditions that a human nervous system requires to function without distress. You are doing the same thing every time you reach out, every time you stay on the phone a little longer, every time you tell someone something true about yourself instead of the polished version, every time you show up when you said you would. You are not being soft. You are running ancient code that kept your species alive for 200 millennia. The loneliness you feel in a crowd is real. The signal is real. The need it points to is not weakness. It is the most human thing about you. The deep cellular certainty that you were never meant to navigate this world alone, and that somewhere in the noise of that crowded room, what you are actually looking for is someone who already knows your name. Tonight, you might be in a room full of people. And if you feel that quiet, hollow pressure, If the crowd makes it worse instead of better, now you know what it is. A 200,000-year-old alarm, still working perfectly, still waiting for the same thing it has always been waiting for. Not more people, the right ones,